So everybody settled in? Great. So, first a little bit about life. How much do you guys make on a monthly basis? What do you guys live from? 600 euros? 700? Is that about average? 500? More? More? What? 1200? You're not a student anymore. Yes, clearly not. So is it safe to say that your average income is about 700 euros? And is that also about what you're spending? Or more? More. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you're spending as much as you're making this time of your life. So the green little cube represents what you're making, and the red cube represents what you're spending. And this is a game developer running the track of life. Can you actually read it from there? Sort of small, huh? So I'll just be... So your life is basically you're a student and you live in a student housing. But then you leave school and voila, you get your first girlfriend. So your expenses double, but you're still making this this little 700 euros a month. So there's already a problem. I'm not sure how you're going to solve it, but I'm just preparing you for when you leave school. This is what's going to happen. A few years later, you're on your second girlfriend, and she wants to rent an apartment with you. So there you go. And you're actually going on vacation for the first time in your life. Then you get a wife, first kid, a car, vacations, multiple vacations, basically to recover from having a kid, I can tell you. So, and your expenses keep rising. And then you have a wife and 3 kids, and a 2-story house, and a station wagon, insurances, vacations, babysitters, and a dog. That costs a lot of money, friends. And, you know, I know that because I'm almost there. I've got 2 kids, but no dog, so that's why I'm trying to save the money. But seriously, this is really where it's going to head. So how are you going to match that red, large, huge tower on the right there? By making games. Well, we're going to talk about business in games. You guys have heard about that today. And we're going to talk about what does that have to do with running a games company, and what does running a games company have to do with who's running the show. So let's look at roughly the 4 big disciplines you have in a games company. I have lumped music for the sake of easiness with the arts, music and audio. And then there's the IT. It's about 40%, maybe 35%. And then there's the game design, which should be in the core, because it's, I think, the most important part of game design. It should be in the middle, but it's not the most work in terms of time spent and people spent. And then there's the business administration side. The organization, the internal management, but also business development, relationships with publishers, the outside world, trying to sell your game. What we see a lot is the art school startup. This is people who know how to draw, they know how to design, and maybe one guy knows Unity a little bit, and they can just barely prototype, but they can make a game. And this is what happens when they start a company. Then we have the tech school startup, where it's just all guys who can program, one sort of draws, and they all are a game designer. Of course, everybody's a game designer, but for the sake of argument, this is roughly a startup coming out of a technology school. And then this is the worst kind. This is all business guys thinking that they know how to start a games company, but they can't make anything. But they exist. So here we go, the Dutch Game Garden, where we are in our building. We have 40 companies, and we work with approximately 10 to 12 startups. And this is roughly the types that we have. And this is all based on a true story. So what is a good game developer? A good game developer is someone who loves to make good games. What is a good game manager, a good CEO? Someone who loves to make a good company. It seems really obvious when you read it like this, but it doesn't seem to be that obvious when I see a lot of startups coming out of school. So we have this, I've been analyzing this whole process for almost 15 years. I've been started in the game industry in '98, and I started as an artist, and then I moved up sort of to the lead artist thing, and then I became a manager somewhere down the road. I did some game design, I've done several tracks, but I always came out of creation and I moved into management. So I'm kind of the type that sort of comes from the right side into management. Now this happens a lot. We've heard Sean talk this morning, and he comes from the technology side. He comes from the left side into management. Now, there's another type that comes from the outside world. This person is actually trained to manage and to do business development. In fact, this is usually someone who cannot program, cannot draw, and cannot design, although the last thing they think they may, but they can't. Trust me. So what happens when you see companies evolve over time? On the left side, or on the top right, it's small companies joining forces, growing, and maybe getting really big. Guerrilla Games is roughly how they start. They started with small companies. There was actually 3 small companies that joined forces and grew and grew. And then in the bottom is, for example, I picked Code Glue. Who knows Code Glue? Rocket Riot? Thank you. Yes. Awesome company, really capable guys, been doing it for a long time. I used to work with them long distance, and they're really good, but they're still really small, but they do really good projects. And you see, roughly, this is not always true, but it's interesting to see that companies run by creatives don't grow really large. There's nothing wrong with that, it's just what I've noticed, and I don't think I'm the first one to notice this. And then the companies that get really big, they tend to have at least a couple of people on board who solely focus on business development, solely focus on management, who actually love that part of the job and actually are really good at that part. So what I've seen in general, the left side, it's kind of comparing with a band. A band doesn't really grow much. I mean, U2 has always been 4 people, right? But they've grown in quality, in the hits they've made, and all that stuff. So they've lasted for, some people tend to disagree here, but that's another discussion, Jan Willem. So, but they rely, and that's the thing, they rely on hits, right? It's a hit-driven business. So we know all the story about the band who had 1 hit, and then we never heard of them again. You guys still hear about Roxette? Ever heard of Roxette? I think they had a couple of hits, and then I've never heard of them again. Anyone know what they're doing, Remco? And then to the right, and I was actually, Jan Willem corrected me, this should be an image of a classical orchestra, maybe a symphony orchestra, but I thought more about the people's association with MBA guys running the show. So this is how that feels this is at least what creatives think a big company is, and maybe they're right.